everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. Cynthia and I are excited to be here and to share some of what we've been working on with you all. And as Dr. B mentioned, we'll be presenting on decoloniality in the study and practice of psychology, a faculty-student collaboration. So just to introduce ourselves, my name is Jack Krizizke. I am a 24-year-old white cisgender heterosexual man of European and Ashkenazi Jewish descent with United States citizenship, and I am a graduate student here at the AUS PsyD program and member of the Decoloniality and Social Privilege Awareness Initiative. And I'm excited to be here and share and discuss some of our work with you today with my colleague Cynthia.
Thank you, Jack. Likewise, I'm thrilled to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cynthia Scheiderer. I'm a third-year student at Antioch PsyD program. And in terms of disclosures, we have no financial disclosures. This is a student volunteer participation in our lab project that we're going to be discussing today. No conflicts of interest. And in terms of just again, with disclosures, my own social location that is relevant to what we've been studying. Jack will be speaking about this a little more, but in the area of sort of conferred and unearned social privilege, I have privileged identities pretty much up and down the line, with the exception of being female, identifying as female.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. And we do acknowledge the nature of our presentation and that we hold largely agent ranks. And we do our best to understand what that means as we approach this topic and to be mindful of this throughout the presentation. And we also welcome any feedback as well. So with that, let's get started. So as we begin, it's important that we acknowledge and discuss how we got to where we are today. And I'll work at providing us some context and vocabulary to kind of detail that process. This research comes from Fanon, who created a 4-phase colonial model. This model is often considered the classic conceptualization for understanding oppression and internalized oppression as a result of coloniality. And he states that in this model that first, colonialism begins with the forced entry of a foreign colonizer who enters a country to exploit natural resources. This includes the people, lands, and product of the lands. And when this idea of colonialism turns into this action, that is what's referred to as colonization. And second, Fanon states that the colonizer, through colonization, imposes their own culture, destroys the indigenous culture, and recreates that indigenous culture as defined by the colonizer. And third, Fanon states that the colonized are then shifted to be viewed as savage, and the colonizer feels like and makes actions upon them that indicates that they must be monitored, tamed, or civilized to the colonizer's standards. And finally, a society is created that benefits and maintains the colonizer's ways of being and punishes those who oppose or disagree. And that's where we are today. And this internalized way of knowing and being set upon this historical context of colonialism is what we refer to as coloniality. And today we can see the coloniality of knowledge and who has access to knowledge and what knowledge is considered valuable. We can see the coloniality of power and who maintains power over who, what they do with that power and what they do to maintain such power. And finally, we can see the coloniality of being in the way that we dress, in our behaviors, in our thoughts, and other standards that we hold ourselves to in society. So here we have the addressing model by Pamela Hayes. And at Antioch University Seattle, students are first exposed to the addressing model in their social justice and clinical psychology course. This model is really a fundamental part of fostering privilege awareness for us here at AUS, which is part of our decolonial aspect of education. And in each category, as you can see, or as we refer to them as identity domains, someone can either be of agent rank, meaning that they hold privilege and power, or target rank, meaning that they do not hold privilege and may be oppressed by those with privilege and power. So as you look at the addressing model, you might already be able to configure your own unique amalgamation of agent and target ranks. And it's this amalgamation of these single identity domains that makes up what we refer to as our social location. So here we can see an example of social location with all agent ranks on the left and all target ranks on the right. And we can see how these may manifest within our real world identities. And while most people have both agent and target ranks, this visual really allows us to compare and contrast some of those social locations and how they may interact with each other. So as you can see, some of the agent ranks include being Gen Z for age, being Christian for religion, and being male for gender. And some target ranks include potentially having a developmental disability, being a non-white individual, and belonging to a minority religion. So together, you can start to piece together your own social location. And it's really the acknowledgement of our social location that's the first step toward seeing privilege and beginning this conversation with ourselves and others.
Great, thank you, Jack. So the collaboration that we wanted to touch on in the brief time we have to give you a taste of, you can do the next slide, Jack. This is a faculty-student collaboration that is collaborating to decolonize the curriculum in a psychology, Doctor of Psychology program. And so these are some of the steps we've been collaborating on, students and faculty together in recent time. So part of it has been an analysis of syllabus and pedagogy, and it's been informed by the literature, so informed by the scholarship and really engaging with that scholarship. It has included joint readings and discussions in various combinations of groups of faculty and students. And there's some examples there of some of the kinds of things that we've been discussing. And then also a project to specifically work on decolonizing the syllabus. And so what that has involved is, for those faculty who've participated in this, is rewriting the syllabus to really examine and kind of undo colonial assumptions that are embedded in the language there. And it has also involved including scholarship in the syllabus requirements, including scholarship on coloniality and psychology throughout the course, whatever the topic of the course is. So this is really about trying to embed this scholarship and engage this scholarship throughout the curriculum. And then again, as part of decolonizing the syllabus, it's been engaging with literature, asking students to engage with literature and critique coloniality as part of the assignment rubrics. So maybe it's doing a research paper. Where can we see coloniality? How can we engage with the literature on coloniality and decoloniality? Next. So part of what this means is resisting a colonial system from within. It's impossible not to do that. This is the air we breathe. And so trying to kind of examine that, become more aware of it, we've looked at psychology, specifically psychology's legacy of coloniality. And part of what we're seeing through the literature and our own experiences is disconsciousness. So just kind of a, ignorance is bliss kind of approach to understanding the legacy and history of this country and of this discipline, of this field. Psychology also has the individual, historically the individual is the unit of analysis and the location of the problem, right, of a disorder. And that is a very colonial idea. And part of what that can involve is a sort of a privileged gaze on otherness. And a lot of othering kind of behavior. Tends to be a focus on disorders. Dr. Bergkamp talked about the medical model. There's an assumption of helping or fixing harm that has occurred in others, not always looking so much at how the harm happened in the first place. And then when it comes down to just curricula and pedagogy, there tends to be the adherence to core competencies, required curricula standards, those kinds of things that we have to pay attention to. But in trying to shift that and examine that and look at where there might be some gaps and some areas for improvement, sometimes there can be avoidance, insufficient institutional commitment, intellectualization, debate. And we just invite you to consider your own experiences as students, as faculty, as professionals, what else, might you have seen? And we hope to hear more about that in the small group later. So again, in diving into this literature and looking at what people have documented about this, There are some things we can expect when we try to make changes, even a change as, maybe seemingly simple as changing a syllabus. And these are scripts that are, kind of with us that get invoked for intra and interpersonal protections because changing the status quo is threatening. It's really challenging, it's threatening, and we acknowledge that. So some of the things we see and that we see in the literature is there can be just sort of silent protest, just withdrawal. There's the both sides kinds of arguments that include, we just want to be colorblind. There's reverse racism, all lives matter, kind of this whataboutism that takes the attention away from the experience of the people who have been affected by coloniality the most. There's also false dichotomies, sort of a divide and conquer kind of an approach can happen in calling out culture, cancel culture. We get performative allyship, impression management, saviorism, sympathy, reassuring, caretaking, kind of catering to the emotional needs of the people with social privilege. So there's the white guilt, the fragility that gets attended to. And part of that can be having the privilege of sort of pulling the safety brake, the safety emergency brake, right? So, if I'm uncomfortable as a white woman, I can say, oh, I don't feel safe, and maybe stop the conversation. Well, who has the privilege to do that? Who has the privilege to essentially stop the conversation? Those are some of the things that seem to be common in what people are describing of their experiences. Next. So our lab's analysis and response to this in our scholarship and in our praxis is that we try to focus on responding to and reflecting on daily life experiences, really being in the here and now, in the present moment in terms of what's going on with people. And that includes engagement with current events. It includes engagement and integration with students' lived experience, and also faculty reaching out to alumni, people who are now early career psychologists. What are they experiencing after having engaged in some of this learning, some of this scholarship? What are they experiencing in their jobs? We also have projects that are specific, very intentionally specific to BIPOC student experiences and BIPOC faculty experiences. So Black, Indigenous, and people of color, privileging that and centering that in some of our, in our projects and our research projects and publishing. And at the same time, also flipping the coin to pay attention to people with agent ranks, with privilege, and sort of ask the question, in the status quo, who benefits? And that does help us to kind of pay attention to what's going on with agency and privilege in this society and take a closer look at that. As part of that, we take a developmental approach. So we have the developmental social privilege awareness model that this lab is published on. And that involves having both target and agent compassion, because as I mentioned, this is difficult work and this can feel very threatening. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Jack to talk about some of the benefits of doing this work. Again, it's not easy work, but we think it's worth it. And Jack can talk a little bit about why.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, so now that we've seen how we're working kind of within that system of coloniality, I'm going to speak a little bit about the benefits of a decolonial and social justice pedagogy as found in the current literature. And these are a lot of the ideas that we base our collaborative work with faculty around. And implementing a decolonial and social justice framework into pedagogy really does have a myriad of benefits for students, faculty, and really the community at large as well. And the first main benefit of this framework is that it helps end the perpetuation of oppression within the academy. So much of the current curriculum is comprised of white and Eurocentric narratives. And these narratives push white ways of knowing, being, and experiencing. So by decolonizing the curriculum, we can share knowledge in a way that's more accessible, more inclusive, and really more representative to those who may cultivate or share knowledge in other ways that don't fit this narrative. And this narrative really is present throughout psychology in many ways. And I'm sure that many of us have experienced this narrative in our own ways at multiple times. So through this work, a new and more accurate narrative can be incorporated. And this approach also stops the use of whiteness as an instrument of power and knowledge within the academy. So as I mentioned earlier about that coloniality of power, who controls knowledge and who controls power and who has power, what do they do with that power? And instead of gatekeeping and perpetuating knowledge and power behind whiteness, we can foster accessibility of knowledge and allow all to really have meaningful learning experiences that are truly representative and effective. And this work contributes to the effort of undoing the embedded impacts of colonialism in pedagogy in the academy. So with that white narrative comprising the curriculum for so long, and whiteness being used as this instrument of power and knowledge throughout history, it's not surprising that it's really become embedded and intertwined and even perpetuated by pedagogy. So implementing a decolonial and social justice framework into the curriculum is a piece of the puzzle, we believe, to decolonizing psychology and the academy at large. We also use a decolonial and social justice lens, and we believe that this can reevaluate and change some of the structural and systemic injustices that present themselves within pedagogy, and even contribute to bettering the education psychology students receive and improving the quality of teaching for faculty as well. And second there, another main benefit is engagement and belonging within the academy for all. So the first bullet point there includes equal access of othered individuals within the academy. And othered is a term that Charles uses to describe those who have been historically marginalized, whose voices have been historically ignored or unheard, and people who have faced systemic injustice, which are usually non-white and non-male individuals. And through a decolonial and social justice pedagogy, individuals who have been historically othered can have increased access to the academy and increase access to overall learning and knowledge. And this can really help and goes both ways for students and faculty as well. And next, this framework encourages belonging by really just better representing our diverse society, specifically by giving spaces for voices to be heard that have been historically silenced through that narrative of colonialism. And this really can foster a more realistic view of our world that can be more inclusive of everyone than that traditional Eurocentric narrative that's currently present. And finally, this work also fosters a more balanced powered structures in the classroom. And this is true not only between faculty and students, but between faculty and student power structures as well. So in the decolonial and social justice lens, that veil of status that perpetuates some of that power is lifted, and it gives less salience to our status as student or as faculty member. And through acknowledging our status through this decolonial and social justice work can really help dissolve some of the unspoken rules and unspoken intimidation that also comes with that and can perpetuate that coloniality. So the Decoloniality and Social Privilege Awareness Initiative, or DSPI, is a research group here at Antioch University Seattle, where we really explore issues of social privilege, issues of oppression, social positionality, with the goal of identifying inequities and opportunities for meaningful action through research activism. And we strive to incorporate social justice activism into our endeavors, also as clinicians, as well as researchers and community members. And we are committed to approaching our work through that lens of decoloniality and investigating the role of coloniality in our scholarship, in our professional work, and in our personal lives. And speaking personally, I guess, in a little bit of a decolonial manner, this lab has really allowed me as a student to complete really great and personally meaningful projects alongside faculty. And living those decolonial values, students have been able to present at really great conferences such as APA 2022, NCSPP, and more. And as a student here at Antioch University Seattle in DSPI, I feel like I'm treated as a colleague, and I'm encouraged to really engage in this discourse, even if I fumble. And I'm expected to fumble, because that is really a part of this work and part of the learning. So Antioch's decolonial approach to research creation is one of the reasons that Cynthia and I are even here, able to give this presentation today. And this approach, we really do believe, increases accessibility and benefits the creation of this meaningful research that oftentimes is kind of sits on the wayside or is left unexamined. And this work's had an immeasurable impact on me as a clinician, as a researcher, and as a human being. So with that, feel free to scan this QR code with your mobile device if you can. And this is a code that will take you to the DSPI website. And on the website, we have information about the lab, about our previous projects, current projects, presentations, publications, you name it. Yeah, and special thanks to Dr. Jude Burkamp and Dr. Melissa Kennedy for their guidance, leadership, and collaboration as we really explore and kind of get a little messy into this, this body of research. So yeah, thank you.
Excellent.